So in this episode of Make It with Calvin, I'm talking about my version of the Tascam DR-05 belt holder and why I decided to make my own after making the version that Jimmy did. Let's talk about it. So before we go any further, much as I loved the Tascam holder that Jimmy from Jimmy Shaw's Tidbits came up with, the simplicity of it and everything like that, I wanted something that I felt was a little more secure for me. Now, the main problem that I had with his was the fact that because it had the slide-in belt clip, it had the advantage of being able to be pulled on and off your belt very quickly, but the drawback to it was obviously the fact that it could also fall off your belt easily if you were not careful. And there were a few times when I was test driving it, running around LA and stuff, where I just felt like, this looks like it's gonna fall off and I'm not really comfortable with this. So when I got back, I put some time and thought into it and came up with this, which is my own version. Now, the key difference already is the fact that it has the belt loop on the back. Main reason behind this is I want to know that this holder is going to stay on my waist. And initially I was worried as well about the Tascam falling out, but reality is it's in there pretty tight, and no, I am not squeezing it. Here, proof. I'm holding it from the belt loop. It's snug enough fit inside there that unless somebody goes yanking it off of me, it's not going to be an issue. So I'm not too worried about that. That said though, I still like the security of the belt loop, and I can easily pull it in and out if the need arises, which is really nice. Now, another thing that I wanted to do a little bit differently on mine was only expose what I felt needed to be exposed, mostly because if this was going to be floating around in, say, my backpack, I didn't want the potential for it to get really scratched up or dinged up or things like that. So to do that, I have only exposed the circle with the buttons, the stop and power button and record and power button, the LCD, and that's it. The overall design of this was a little bit tricky at first because I literally had a pair of calipers and I was just measuring stuff and going, I think this works, print up a prototype, okay, this fits, this lines up, this doesn't, go from there. Finally, after a few more iterations, I finally got it to where I feel it is good. Now, this version is not perfect as it's a slightly older one, and I have not felt like printing another one because this does work. But on the side, you'll notice that I have the USB port, which is lined up, but the headphone jack is a little bit off. But for me, I could probably just go in there with an X-Acto knife and make it a little bit bigger. Yeah, I know, slightly hack, but you know what? I really don't feel like spending another 4 hours printing another one. The material that I printed this in is actually not nylon, unlike the previous ones. I was running into a lot of moisture and warp issues with nylon, so as much as I love the strength of nylon, those were really problematic, so I decided to go with NGen Flex, which is a little bit like nylon in the fact that it does like to warp a little bit, which is a bit frustrating, but I think if I had better fan control and maybe even like a little door in front of the printer, it might have worked better. Also, the build surface that I was working on was having issues with the sheet coming off the adhesive that it was on, so that also contributed a little bit to the warping. So the underside of this is not perfect, as you can see, and the camera is slightly exaggerating it as well. But for the sake of being a completely functional print, you know what? It works fine. For me, the aesthetics of this are not as important as the functionality. And the reality is most of the time this is going to be hiding on my waist unless I'm conducting an interview. And even then, it's probably just going to be pulled out of the Tascam's going to be pulled out, hit record, get it going, stick it back in, do the interview, pull it out, shut it off, all that good stuff. So if you guys want to download this, I will have links to where you can do so on Pinshape. I do have 2 versions, this one and one that actually has the ability to use an O-ring or a rubber band to really, 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 really securely store your Tascam in there. Reality is, I don't think that's necessary, but I did design that up as an option if somebody wanted to have like extremely rugged holding. Now, as for the print itself, I would not recommend making this in any kind of rigid filament. This is designed for a somewhat flexible filament, so a semi-flex, a NGen Flex, things like that. A nylon is what I would recommend. Otherwise, maybe go make Jimmy's because it was designed for a hard filament. So if you guys enjoyed this, and I got some more printing to do for Maker Faire, and as it is, the print behind me is another Maker Faire print, so I will see you later.